You may know him as the travel detective, as well as the travel editor for the Today Show. You might also have seen his work on, the Travel Channel, in which he hosts a show entitled The Royal Tour, which is actually quite awesome. Peter is one of the most lauded travel authors today, from the Emmys that he has to his very popular blog, which incorporates many of the ideas from the book that we're discussing today. That blog, of course, is petergreenberg.com. He's also won several awards, including the Distinguished Service Award in Journalism from our friends in the Big Ten at the University of Wisconsin, as well as the Excellence in Broadcasting Award from the Aviation Space Writers Association of America. He'll be speaking to us today from his new book, which is entitled Don't Go There, The Travel Detective's Essential Guide to the Must-Miss Places of the World. So with the holiday travel season fast upon us, I know some of us are still narrowing down the places to go, the people to see. This book can help you definitely plan your vacation. From Bugs Bunny taking a wrong turn at Albuquerque to the drama that you see in airports as shown on one of my favorite television shows, The Amazing Race, to even more sinister locales. This book will show you the picture behind world travel. And I thought I would close with another interesting point of fact that you may or may not know. But Peter also used to be the vice president for television development at Paramount, where he helped create, among other shows, MacGyver. So if you'd like to ask any questions during the Q&A about how your travel life can be better improved if you're stuck on, say, like the Osaka subway system and you got to find out where to go, you only have a paper clip, a ball of twine, and maybe a piece of string or some silly putty, he'll give you the answer. These skills come full circle in the book. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Peter Greenberg.
All right, he had to bring up MacGyver. That's okay. I'm assuming that you guys are travelers. I'm assuming that you're here because you like to travel. How many people here have passports? Applaud yourselves because you are in the distinct minority. Only 25% of Americans have them. And that's pretty sad. And the number's not really growing as fast as it should, but that's the fact. And the other fact is that as travelers, we share something else in common that our parents didn't. And that is, it's in our cultural DNA to travel. My parents traveled because it was either a family emergency or they went once a year someplace that they planned for 3 years to go. We don't do that. We travel because we think it's our birthright, and we travel. We just don't want to be abused. We just don't want to be beaten up. I see a number of you looking at my last book, which is called The Complete Travel Detective Bible. Not a book that's easily packable. It's a rather large book. But what I tried to do in that book is make it sort of like the physician's desk reference of travel, everything you needed to know about the process of travel. Now, when it comes to most travel writing, I'm almost embarrassed to tell you that most travel writing today still remains unabashed boosterism, it's cheerleading, it's promotion, it borders quite dangerously on infomercialdom. Every third word ends in ST, right? Best, greatest, most, loveliest, nicest. It's a brochure mentality that I get very angry about, that I wish we could bury. And of course, there's some other great buzzwords like paradise and pamper and luxury. We should throw those out too. Most travel writing books, most books about destinations, are almost by definition obsolete by the time they come out, or they have a philosophy that if you can't say something nice about a place, don't say it. That is not my philosophy. I've been on the Today Show now for about 14 years. I started as a correspondent for Newsweek on the West Coast, as an investigative reporter, and in fact was based for many years in San Francisco as well. And the most I ever had time to spend on a story was maybe 2.5 days, because we were weekly. And if I couldn't get the story done in 2.5 days, there was either something really wrong with the story or something really wrong with me. And it's that discipline that I basically have applied to travel writing. I'm an investigative travel writer. I'm not there to talk about lovely London or beautiful Bermuda, although I'm sure London is quite lovely. I also live there. But that's not the point. The point is that my definition of a tourist is victim waiting to happen. My definition of traveler is tourist who's been victimized. So, welcome travelers. You've all been victimized one way or the other, either by price, by attitude, or by your environment. And so I thought it would be a good idea. I'm sure you're familiar with the book. It's still on the bookshelves, written by a very nice woman, a friend of mine named Patricia Schultz, called 1,000 Places to See Before You Die. You see it everywhere, right? And that's for people who like to check off lists and want to know if they've actually been places. Somebody's already laughing about that, but maybe. But I thought it was time to turn that concept on its head and essentially do a book called 1,000 Places to Die Before You See. And that's what Don't Go There is all about. It's the essential guide to the must-miss places of the world. Let me translate that for you. Places that suck, okay? Can we just call it what it is? But we divided the book into a number of interesting categories. Corruption, crime, pollution, highways of death, DUIs, fast food intake, places that literally stink, they smell, lamest claims to fame, brochures that absolutely lie, terrible hotels, the worst airports, banned airlines, things you need to know before you plan your next trip. I'm all in favor of travel. You bet. I think it's the largest industry in the world. It employs the most number of people. It's singularly responsible for the largest amount of GDP in 93 countries that you can imagine. It's significant. And most people don't think of it that way because they haven't connected the dots. They don't really realize how big it is. You want to know how big it is? We just had 2 incidents that happened in the last 2 weeks that'll show you the economic impact of travel. You want to topple a government? Close the airport in Bangkok. See what happens after 5 days. The government fails because you've basically taken away their entire source of foreign exchange. It's the cash flow stops, travel and tourism. Let's talk about the Middle East. Let's take a look at Israel, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, and Egypt. Can anybody here tell me what these countries produce that you consume? How about this? Nothing except travel and tourism. The first wake-up call that we had was on 9/11. You have a question already? Yes. I didn't say anything. I said, what do they produce in volume that we consume?
Israel has the 3rd largest number of companies listed on NASDAQ, more than any country in Europe, second only to the United States and Canada.
Okay, now take all those companies on NASDAQ and ask them what their total income is versus travel and tourism to Israel. And you know what the answer is? Travel and tourism. That's one you can't dispute. I'm sure they're on NASDAQ. I'm sure there are a lot of companies on NASDAQ. The point that I'm making is that the wake-up call that happened on 9/11, actually the wake-up call was really on 9/12, when all the airlines were grounded in this country for 5 days. There were a lot of countries that almost had to fold their tents because their source of income just dried right up. So bottom line is it's huge. And yet we haven't connected the dots as a government. We're the only government of a developed country in the world that I know of that doesn't have a cabinet-level office of travel and tourism. Every other country has a minister of tourism. We don't. The state of Illinois spends more money trying to get people to visit Illinois than the United States as a whole. It's a little scary. And especially now with the weakened dollar, where we need all that kind of help, we're not getting it. Bottom line is, what I try to do is to let you know, because you are travelers, you all raised your hands, you have passports. I presume when you raised your hands, that also means you use them. And a passport does what? It gives you options that other people don't have. But it also gives you an option to get beaten up if you don't do your homework. And I'm not talking literally, although I'm sure that happens. We do have a section in the book on crime and corruption. But what I'm suggesting is that it was time to put together a book that gave people, especially in these hard economic times, credible information so that you guys can make intelligent travel choices, so that it's not just about, it's not just about cost, it's about worth. The whole travel industry is predicated on a bad business model, and they're finding that out right now. The bad business model is, what will the market bear? They think it's all price-driven. It's not. It's value-driven. It's what the market will value. You know that every time you take a trip because you have your own set of criteria that you apply to whether or not something works for you. I get angry at the 5 stars or the 5 diamonds. In many countries, you know what a 5-star or a 5 diamond means? It's a government designation that just reflects the price they're charging. It's a tax code. So if you're staying at a 5-star hotel, that means you're paying more than everybody else. That's all it means. Doesn't mean it's a great hotel or that you had great service or that you felt good about being there. And in this country, what's the criteria used to come up with those 5 stars? If a place has a golf course and they get 5 stars because they have a golf course and you don't play golf, why is that a 5-star experience for you? So it's about coming up with your own set. This book, the new book, Don't Go There, is by definition incomplete because you all have your own list of places you don't want to go. And as a result of that, we started a separate website called don'tgothere.org just to let everybody have an opportunity to tell me what was on their list. And you couldn't make this stuff up. It's coming in like an avalanche. I'll give you an example. We had a guy who sent in an email, and people aren't just sending in emails, as you know, they're visually supporting them, either with photos or videos. Everybody today is a citizen journalist. Everybody has their camera on their cell phone or more. And this guy sent in an email that said the worst experience he ever had was at the Hotel Bel Air. Now, wait a minute, that is the premier hotel in Los Angeles. You mean the Bel Air Hotel in Bel Air, California? No, it was the Bel Air Hotel in like Armpit, Kansas. But to visually support his experience, he sent in a photograph of the bath towels in his hotel hanging on the rack in his hotel bathroom. And if you look closely, what did you see on the bath towels? The words Hotel Bel Air written in black magic marker. An indication right there of what the rest of his experience is possibly going to be. And I encourage you to go to that website and contribute as well, because this is the first of a number of books we're going to do, and hopefully develop this also as a television series, because once again, I think people need to know where not to go. And by the way, if we tell people don't go here because, and we list it very carefully, everything we have in the book is triple sourced for all the obvious reasons, and they get their act together and really clean up their act, I'm more than happy to then go back and say, hey, remember the hotel we told you to go to, not to go to? Well, now you can go there. Or the destination we said was really bad and toxic, they've cleaned it up. Or somebody could conceivably spend $20 million trying to fix it, and it still sucks. That's life. So we had a lot of fun doing this book as well, especially under the category of lamest claims to fame. Brochures that are either hyperbolic to the extreme or just outright lie. Right? There's a place in Ashland, Virginia. In fact, the entire city of Ashland, Virginia, their brochure says they're the center of the universe. Okay. I basically said in the book, here's a news bulletin. You're not only not the center of the universe, you're not even the center of Virginia. I mean, what does that mean, right? We had a place in Fountain, Minnesota. Their motto on their brochure was, and think about this, they actually probably had 3 meetings to figure that this was a good idea, the sinkhole capital of America. But it's worse, because what do they put on the brochure to illustrate the sinkhole capital of America? An artist illustration of 2 young boys on bicycles. Wait a minute, it's the sinkhole capital of America. Where's little Johnny? I don't know, he's gone. So we had some fun with that too. We also had fun with the places that literally stink. That's right, they smell. Not just in this country, we did worldwide stuff here. Anybody know about what the garbage situation is like in Naples, Italy? Yeah. There is no cold mask in the world that will protect you from that now. I mean, it is just a steaming pile of garbage, because the Italian garbage guys don't just go on strike. One day, it's a garbage strike festival. And in fact, if you look at the history of Italy, every prime minister has run on a campaign, including Berlusconi in the last campaign, claiming that if he's elected, he'll clean up the garbage in Naples. And guess what? He got elected, and he cleaned up the garbage in Naples for 1 day. And then came the second day, and the third. There's a place called Hereford, Texas. Now, there are about 14,000 people who live in Hereford, and about 3.5 million cows. That works out to about 241 cows for every man, woman, and child in Hereford. So if you go there, you will be stepping in it. I'm just letting you know that. Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Now, Cedar Rapids, Iowa, their motto is, we're the town or the city of 5 seasons. 5 seasons, wait. Okay, what's the 5th season? It's kind of cute. It's the time to enjoy the other 4. Isn't that special? Okay, except for one small problem. The people in Cedar Rapids will also tell you, who live there, that it's known by another motto, the city of 5 smells, because of all the cereal factories there. It really does smell, and it really does stink. It's like Captain Crunch is having a really bad day. We're just letting you know about it, so you know. There's a place in western Kentucky that's so bad that in Cumberland County, the Sierra Club now actually offers a tour de stench. You can actually take, I'm not recommending it, I'm just saying it's available to you. If you really have nothing else better to do that day, you can go take it. So that's on the lighter side. On the more serious side of toxic cities, we talk about some cities that are so far gone, I don't know if redemption is possible. You know, it's very nice to know that China cleaned up their act for the 3 weeks of the Olympics, which proves, by the way, that if they wanted to, they could, and they did, right? Well, the Olympics are over, and it's business as usual. And if you read in this book, there's some cities in China, and we're not talking about Beijing or Shanghai. There's some other cities that have, in some cases, almost 40 million people living there, that I would not go right now, even if I was wearing a hazmat suit. It's that bad. And then there are some surprises in this country. There's a state in this country right now, it surprised me when we did the research, that at last count had 126 polluted rivers and lakes. Everyone want to guess which one that is? You're not going to get it because you'll never guess it. Vermont. You heard me, Vermont. I didn't guess it either, but it's a fact. So what did I say in the book? I didn't say don't go to Vermont. I didn't say don't go and have Ben & Jerry's. I said if you're going to go to Vermont and you want to jump on Lake Champlain, you might want to read the book first because people aren't expecting that. Now, we had a lot of reaction so far. The book's only been out about 3 weeks. We've had a lot of reaction from individual cities and towns mentioned in the book, as you can imagine. And the usual reaction is to hold a press conference and ban me from the city, followed by a news conference in which they then invite me to the city. But in between the first conference and the second conference, it's always very interesting to see what happens. The mayor of North Charleston, South Carolina, which has a rather large crime rate, held a press conference in which he called me a jerk, banned me from the city, and then demanded to know where I got my figures. How did I get those statistics? So I gave him the name of his own police chief, which we then corroborated with the FBI. But then came the fun part, which is part two, when they invited me to come again and said, we'd like to invite Mr. Greenberg to visit our city during any of the nights that we're doing our citizens' patrols against crime and drugs. I said, wait a minute. You would be having a citizen patrol against crime and drugs because, oh yeah, I got it. You got a problem with crime and drugs, which is why I did the story. They just didn't connect the dots. So it was a very interesting reaction, not unexpected, by the way, but an interesting reaction to the stories that I did because of what they perceived the role of travel journalism to be. They wanted me to be their marketing partner. They wanted me to be their promotional pal. And that's not what I do. As I said on the Today Show, without taking myself too seriously, but it is journalism and it is news. In fact, you can't open up the front page of any newspaper in America in a given 5-day period and not see at least one story these days that's not travel related. That may have not been the case 10 years ago, but that is the case now. And as I tried to explain, I don't report for the travel industry, I report on it. And that's an important distinction that needs to be made. I wish more and more travel writers would do that. I was once at an editor's conference where the editor of a paper in Indianapolis stood up and said, our philosophy on the travel section of this paper is if we can't say something nice about a place, we won't say it. And I said, you should resign. You're not being responsible. Now, I don't get up in the morning trying to trash a place, but if the place has 126 polluted rivers and lakes, I think somebody needs to know about that. Why? Because you need to vote with your wallets. And you need to vote, you want to make your choices about where you go based on information that at least gives you the fighting chance of having a good experience. All too often, we've essentially been conditioned in the wrong way by clever marketers in the travel industry, right? Why do we fly? Why do we get on airplanes? Well, are we on the planes for the rich Corinthian leather? Are we on the planes for the wine list on board? Are we on the planes for the Broadway show tunes they'll be performing? No. Let me tell you what we're on the plane for. Honestly, we're on the planes to go from point A to point B and not die. That basically says it, right? When somebody calls you on the phone and says, I had the worst flight ever, it was worse than the Holocaust, I will never fly this airline again, I have to ask them two questions. Question number one, at any time during the flight, did you hit a mountain? No, okay. And when you landed, did the wings cartwheel and explode into flames? No. You didn't have a horrible flight. You had a great flight. You landed. You're alive. That's why we fly. And then once we get there, then we have our experience. We have to get through the plane experience to get to the experience we want to have. The airlines all have a motto now. They just don't want to tell you the new motto. You remember the old motto, right? Delta is ready when you are? No, they're not. They never have been. Never will be. American Airlines, we know why you fly. Well, if that's the case, they have no excuse. I can go through every other airline motto except the one they don't want to tell you, which is the one they all embrace. The airline's motto is, we're not happy until you're not happy. Right? You go to the, does anybody here actually, come on, be honest now, does anybody here actually get up in the morning enthusiastic about going through an airport or getting on a plane? No, you're visualizing being alive at the end of the flight. And then you get to have your experience. So what I wrote that's not the first book, but that's the most recent book, which is about how to basically get through that process unscathed or less scathed, because you're going to get scathed, right? We minimize a successful journey by how much we minimize the abuse, if we're being honest. And look what the airlines are doing now. They're nickel and diming us for everything short of pay toilets. And if you think that is funny, consider this. I had the CEO of a major U.S. airline on my show recently, and I said, look at the camera and tell my audience that you have no plans to install pay toilets. And you know what his response was? It's not on the list yet. So start thinking correct change, because it's probably going to happen. The airlines are doing everything they possibly can to generate revenue without officially raising fares. You see it in their ads. They outright boldly lie. LA to New York or San Francisco to New York, 184, asterisk. Right? Now what does the asterisk say? One-way fare requiring round-trip purchase. So it's not 184, it's 368. How stupid did they think we are? We can do basic arithmetic, but that's just the first asterisk. Then there are the state taxes, the federal taxes, the passenger facility charges, the fuel surcharge that they shouldn't be charging now because fuel's gone down. And let's not forget what it costs to check your bags. Now, I haven't checked a bag in 8 years. I believe there are two kinds of airline bags, carry-on and lost. And you know that. What do? I FedEx my bags. But in the big book that you have there, we basically archive about 17 different courier services that will get your bags door to door. I mean, think about this. It wasn't that long ago that the airlines would lose my bags for free. Wasn't that pleasant? Why would I then want to pay them to have them lose my bags? So I do FedEx, but there are 16 other services that will do the exact same thing, and I'm not making this up and I'm not exaggerating. I save an average 2 hours of my life every time I travel by not checking bags. And I can actually I give you the actual minute-by-minute layout of it all. And where are my bags when I get there? They're in my room. I don't have to stand first of all, I print my boarding pass up the night before. I'm sure many of you do that. And then when I go to the airport for an early morning flight, I don't go to departures. That's a zoo, right? That's where the police dogs are and the people screaming, right? So what do? I go to arrivals at 6 o'clock in the morning. There's nobody there. And then I go up the escalator, go through security. I already have my boarding pass, go to the gate. When I land, I don't have anybody meet me at arrivals. That's a refugee center. More screaming dogs. And people with their eyes transfixed against the carousel, hoping against hope that their bag was on the same flight they were. And waiting for about an hour because there was a shift change. And then getting stuck in rush hour traffic. So when I land, my car picks me up at the departure level. Nobody's there. And I go right to where I have to go, either home or to a hotel, wherever I'm going. And where are my bags? They're there. There's your 2 hours. It works every time. And I think it's so ironic that last week, United Airlines announced, I don't know if you saw this, they're starting a new service. They're going to ship your bags. United is going to ship my bags? That's a double negative. They couldn't even carry the bags. I don't need United. That's just branding gone nuts. I'll just go to FedEx or UPS or up until recently DHL, even though they're canceling out their domestic service. But there are another 14 services that'll do that. I mean, there is a way to beat the airlines and the cruise lines and the hotels and the rental car companies at their own game, playing by their rules. And that's what I've always done. And the same thing is applying to the new book, because I think you need to know that kind of information so that you don't make those kinds of mistakes. Anybody have any questions, by the way? Yeah.
How do they get the bags? How long are you without your bags when you ship them?
How long am I without them?
Yeah, I mean, if they're not on the same flight, they can't get.
Well, no, I'll tell you, oh no, they're not on my flight even if I ship them. No, here's how it works. First of all, let's talk about some holidays that there are no news bulletins, right? We know that Thanksgiving is the last Thursday of November. No big surprise there. And we know that this year Christmas is also on a Thursday. So you know ahead of time where you're going to travel, unless it's a last-minute business trip, okay? So 3 days ahead of time, you call FedEx and you either send it 3 days ahead, there's a discount on the way bill, or you do FedEx Ground. It doesn't matter. It's still going to beat you there. And when it comes time to come home, who says your dirty laundry has to be there by 10:30 the next morning? Nobody. Plus, you don't want it. You'll get it when you get it. So, but the real key is when you land, are your bags waiting for you when you get on the outbound trip? And the answer is yes. FedEx has only lost my bags once, and it was for a day when there was a freak snowstorm in Memphis. Because as you know, if you wanted to send a bag from Menlo Park to Mountain View, it would go through Memphis, because that's how they do their system. Questions? Yes, in the back. Sure. The question is, do I report on the quality of the airlines U.S. based? Is that? I am talking about U.S. based airlines. That is correct. Yes. I'm sorry, what? Yes. Here's the problem. Yeah.
You will not find the fact that there are. So you will not find the fact that there are 128 rivers that are polluted in Vermont, but they will tell you if there is a big pile of trash that makes the whole city stink.
Well, here's the problem with TripAdvisor. I find it very entertaining. I'm sure you do too. I read it like I read the astrology column. I'm entertained by it. The problem with TripAdvisor is it's not vetted. It's not vetted. And you have to vet it. That's why we triple sourced everything we had in the book. There's the difference. And look, I love TripAdvisor. I find it, it's like, you know, but I read it like I read the astrology column. I was born on the cusp, right? So if between, you know, Capricorn and Aquarius. So if Capricorn says don't travel and Aquarius says great day to fly, I pick the one I like, you know? So TripAdvisor is entertaining. It allows you to get to a little bit closer area to making a judgment, but I don't depend on it because it's not vetted. It really isn't. Other questions? Yes?
You talked quite a bit about some obscure places to travel and them being not so good. You've talked quite a bit about some of the more obscure places to travel and them not being quite so good. But what about sort of more mainstream, you know, like the Bangkok, Cancun, Sydney, Australia?
Oh, that's all in the book.
Paris, London.
Oh, no, every one of those places in the book represented in one form or another as it applies to the book. Either as an expensive city, a corrupt city, a crime-ridden city, a city where trains are most likely to derail. Believe it or not, we have that in the book. We had to update the book right before it was published because we basically said Galveston is the city most likely to get hit by a hurricane, and then it got hit a month before the book came out. I had to change it because everybody would think I was lying, that I just made it up. But we are not making blanket statements. Even when I talked about Cedar Rapids, we didn't say don't go to Cedar Rapids. We said if you're going to go to Cedar Rapids, you might want to stay off I-380 because, boy, are you going to smell Cedar Rapids for the rest of your life if you come in on that road. So we were trying to be fair about it as well. Yep, question over there.
I was in Thailand over Thanksgiving and had to stay 5 days later because I couldn't get out. Just wondering.
Oh, he was trapped in a beautiful country. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Sad, so sad. I was wondering what was going through your mind while that was happening, and you were seeing 100,000 people at the airport, and also do you have any reaction to specific airlines, how they reacted to the crisis?
Sure. Well, first of all, for reasons of full disclosure, I should tell you I also live in Bangkok even now. So I built my house there 18 years ago. First of all, this is the new airport, not the old airport. That's probably where you were trying to get out, right? And there were 100,000 people. 100,000 people shutting down that airport. And I understood why they were doing it. I don't think the country even expected it was going to be that big of a protest, but it happened. And it toppled the government. The prime minister's gone already. They said, the prime minister either goes or we stay here and close down the airport. Guess what? The prime minister went. So,
What's
hello.
going on? That's fun.
Okay, fine. That was the prime minister calling in from an undisclosed location. The truth about travel is this. You don't judge a successful trip when things go right. You judge a successful trip on how things get recovered when things go wrong. That's the true definition of great service, right? So a lot of people will say, oh, this is a great airline because they serve great meals and the flight attendants are very attractive and the seats are comfortable and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, an engine breaks in Chicago and they're all sitting there like stricken birds for 2 days because none of them have the authority to make it better. They didn't recover very well. And what you saw in Thailand was that they didn't recover very well because they really didn't have a choice. I mean, there was no other way out for you except overland or taking a train down to Malaysia. When you think about it, I mean, you're not going to take a train to Hong Kong. It ain't going to happen. But there's a train down to Kuala Lumpur. Could have done that. But you get no sympathy from me because you spent 5 more days in Thailand this year than I did. So, and you had a great time too. Come on. I know you did.
Follow-up question,
Yeah.
sorry. I think British Airways seemed like they were one of the only airlines that reacted well and that they set up a specific 800 number. And I don't know if I didn't hear too many more specifics, but I wondered if you did. And if you were CEO of an airline.
No,
what
you're
would you have
absolutely
done?
right. Very few airlines, there's a caste system. There's a pecking order when it comes to trouble on an airplane with an airline. If you are a member of their mega million miler club and you're flying up in premium class, they'll get you out. If you got a copy of Lonely Planet with a pair of Birkenstocks on, and you're in seat 65E, you know what? Get another copy of the book because you'll be reading it. I mean, that's the name of the game. However, of all the countries you could have picked to get stuck in, I mean, I think you would agree that Thailand has refined and defined great service and hospitality. And when everybody tells me, and you're not the only one, by the way, that they were trapped in Bangkok for 5 days, I went, shut up, Hi. And he's still partying. Look at him. He's. Yep. Listen, I've been trapped in the Sudan. Now that's not fun. All right? There's a difference. Because there ain't nobody. I mean, you're literally on your own. Yes, in the back. We'll get you a microphone. Hold on.
I forgot to ask before. You mentioned about that mayor who initially forbid you from entering their city. Is that legally possible? How does it exactly
No.
work? It's just a statement, right? Or
Listen, I did a
don't know.
piece a couple of years, not a couple, many years ago. Did anybody remember seeing, I'm now, this is the part of the conversation where I date myself, okay? There was a movie with Charles Durning years ago called The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas. Did anybody see that movie? Thank you. One person. Okay, that was actually made to parody a governor of Texas named Dolph Briscoe, who most people thought, gee, parallel, I don't know, was an idiot. And I did a story in Newsweek which basically brought to light for the first time what an idiot he was. And that the fact that his wife was really running the state because he was just completely in another world. And when the story ran in Newsweek, he held a press conference in Austin, Texas. It was only his second press conference in 4 years. That should tell you something. He had 2 things to say at the press conference. Number 1, I'm mentally competent to be governor. And number 2, Peter Greenberg is banned from Texas. Well, it's nice to say that, but last time I knew I didn't need a passport to go to Texas. So the answer is no. I mean, it's that people just want to make statements. Yeah, we have a question over there.
With the increasing popularity of social networking sites like Yelp and TripAdvisor that have people being honest about what's going on in certain places, do you see those infomercially types of reviews either going out the window or becoming more honest?
I don't think they have a choice because, Clifford was mentioning in his introduction to me that I was on the Travel Channel for many years. Well, I'm not on the Travel Channel now, and I'll tell you why. When I was on the Travel Channel, we ran it as a news network. We took it seriously. Today, the Travel Channel has become, I'm sorry to say, product placement and infomercial. With the exception of 2 shows that I can think of, Anthony Bourdain's show called No Reservations, and the other guy, the crazy guy who eats the stupid food, you know who I'm talking about, Zimmer. Yeah. Those are the only 2 shows that I know of that the Travel Channel doesn't even control. They're just delivered to them and say, air them, but don't touch them. But everything else they touch is infomercial, and they have hosts there that go, at this hotel, they serve water for dinner. It's like, stop. I think we're smarter than that. And I think that anybody who thinks that pay-for-play on television or radio or on the internet is going to work is in for a rude awakening because of the very thing you bring up about social networking. You're all citizen journalists. You all can talk now. You can all talk about your experiences credibly and with detail. The best example I can give you actually happened way before, it happened about 9 years ago, so way before the explosion in social networking and sites. And here's the story, and there's such a lesson to be learned there, which, by the way, has not yet been learned by the travel industry. But we certainly learned it, and the people directly involved certainly learned it. There was a Singapore Airlines 747 that was going to take off from Taiwan for Los Angeles, from Taipei. And the pilots blew it. They turned down the wrong runway instead of the right runway, and the wrong runway was under construction. And it was raining. And as they got up to about 80 knots, they started hitting trucks, cement mixers, derricks, and of course the plane crashed and exploded into flames. And Singapore Airlines holds an immediate press conference and says, yes, we've had an accident in Taipei, everybody's okay, nobody injured, nobody dead. At that very moment, there were 5 Americans who were on that plane on their cell phone to us live on the Today Show talking about all the bodies coming out of the plane. So anybody who attempts to manage the news or sugarcoat it or delay it is in competition with everybody in this room, and they will lose. So even though I said as an answer to the TripAdvisor question it's not vetted, what we're doing now on the website that we started, don'tgothere.org, just because somebody sends us a post, we don't post it for 72 hours. We now go and check it out before we post it. And we give the so-called offending travel provider an opportunity to respond, because I think that's the fair way to go. So, however, that doesn't take away from the power of the people in this room and the power of the people outside this room who have the opportunity to talk to each other in almost instant, ways to talk about what the situation really is. I mean, a published guidebook, even mine, will fail if I don't constantly update it. Because I remember, I can pick up any one of about a dozen guidebooks today that'll talk about the beautiful Tower Palace wing of the Taj Hotel in Mumbai. Well, we all know what happened to the Tower Palace wing, and it's going to be closed for at least 2 years to fix all the fire damage from the terrible incidents of about a week and a half ago. So we do need that proves that travel is news. And I'm open to user-generated content as long as it's vetted. Any other questions? Come on, don't be shy. I've got somebody in the room back there.
Hi, I was wondering if you could give us your opinion on, I guess, the new wave in ethical travel, socially responsible travel. I have no doubt that you have opinions.
I'm more than not going to have opinions. If you look in that book, there's an entire chapter on it. It is one of the fastest growing segments of the travel industry. You can call it voluntourism, or if you talk about socially responsible travel, that also gets into agritourism and sustainable tourism and fair trade tourism, right, including fair trade. Let me tell you who's leading that movement. Children. They're doing it for their parents. They're actually educating their parents as well they should. We do a series on the Today Show that I've done for many years now on volunteer vacations, places where you can go and literally make a difference as opposed to hanging by the pool with a pina colada stuck up your nose. And the overwhelming response, which we didn't anticipate at first, and now we do because we realize where it's coming from, were from parents asking how they could take their kids. And now it's kids basically saying, how can we take our parents, which is great. And I think that part of the reason why I do what I do is because I'm still fascinated with the process. If you ask kids where food comes from today, unfortunately, most of the time they'll tell you the store. And we have a problem there. And I really think that if you can really appreciate the process, really understand the process, then you will value in ways you never did before the product. And volunteer vacations and agritourism and socially responsible and sustainable and fair trade tourism goes a long way towards doing that. And anything I can do, I do. In fact, I'm on the board of an amazing group based here in Northern California, by the way, called Airline Ambassadors. And it's a group of about 6,000 flight attendants from 34 different airlines, also pilots and mechanics. And we run 10 to 12 missions a month to orphanages around the world, delivering medical equipment, goods, supplies, and educational opportunities so that they can learn how to grow their own food sustainably, how they learn how they can cook food efficiently, and everything else to do to manage their life in ways that they were never allowed to do. So the answer to your question is I'm all over that. Any other questions? Who's going away for holidays? How many people made their reservations? Okay, now here's the part you're not going to like. How many did them online? Okay. Here's my online lecture for the day. I go online too. But guess what I do first? It's a two-word concept that we've lost in this country. It's called human being. I know it's a tough concept in this room, but I actually pick up the phone and I talk to a human being. And I'm going to tell you why. The internet does not hold all the inventory of what you want. It doesn't. It holds the inventory of what the travel supplier wants to release to the individual site. So a human being on the other end of that phone might just have some better ideas. The internet, when it comes to reservations on travel, does not think creatively. It thinks linearly. It's not going to know, it can't negotiate with you except on a pre-programmed idea. I'll give you an example. If I need to go to Los Angeles tomorrow to New York tomorrow from Los Angeles, and I go on any of the websites, even the big aggregators like Kayak, it's going to show me, among other things, American Airlines Flight 34. Leaves, I think, around 8 o'clock in the morning. That coach fare tomorrow could be as high as $1,100 one way because I'm booking it today, right? I call the 800 number for American and talk to a supervisor. Supervisors are okay to talk to, you know. They know things. They also have the ability to make things happen. And what does the supervisor volunteer to me? That American Airlines has a flight called Flight 118. It leaves either at 6:30 or at 6:45 in the morning. It's a positioning flight. How many people here know what a positioning flight is? All right, now I'm going to, oh, very good, Clifford. A positioning flight is, they don't care about you. They don't care about me. They care about getting that plane to New York in time so it becomes the premier business traveler flight at 5 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the afternoon East Coast time to come back to Los Angeles where they can charge people $1,100, right? What's the fare on Flight 118 tomorrow morning? $289. Internet didn't tell me that. I just saved what, 800 and some odd dollars? Now, I know what you're going to say. Oh, but if I talk to a human being, they'll charge me $30. I just saved you $800 by talking to a human being. Now, I'm not saying don't use the internet. I'm saying call the human being, negotiate the lowest fare you can, and you're given 24 hours in which to pay for it. So it's in that 24 hours you then surf the web and see if you can beat it. But everybody goes to the web first because it's expedient and it's fast. You can do it in your bathrobe at 3 in the morning, blah, blah, blah. You can talk to a human being at 3 o'clock in the morning, too. They're there because it's always 9 o'clock in the morning somewhere in the world where that airline flies. They're there. You still have the 24-hour window in which to try to beat it on the web. So research it on the web, get on the phone, talk to a human being, lock it in for 24 hours, and then see if you can beat it on the web. But don't try to lock it in on the web first, because then if you don't get a good fare and you find out you can get a fare lower later on, you got nobody to call but Ghostbusters. You're stuck with that fare. Yeah.
This is not really a question, just adding, I had a similar experience with American Airlines before, in the sense that there was actually a mismatch. They were trying to, not trying to explain to me, but that was clearly the understanding, that there was a mismatch between what the online reservation system, the fares they would offer, and what they on their side can actually offer.
Oh, that's my point.
Yeah, no, but the way somehow that happens, I mean, is sort of for the future, because for some of us it will happen in the future. Like, for instance, we book, we place a reservation on hold, and then sometimes we miss the on-hold deadline.
I didn't tell you to miss the deadline.
Yeah, I know, but this happened to me several times, actually.
You
And
missed
then
the deadline several times?
For the online hold.
Well, that's why they call it a deadline.
What I'm saying, yeah, I know that's why they call it a deadline, but what I'm saying is that the deadline online is different than the actual deadline on their side. That's what I'm trying to
No, here's what they do on the deadline online.
Yeah. This is what actually happened.
Trust me on this. The deadline online, anybody here, look, you're all here with your computers. Want to play a game? Go online right now. Make a dummy reservation on American Airlines, and they will hold it till 11:59 tomorrow night. There's your 24-hour period. The only time they change that is if you're booking a first-class, full-fare ticket. They might actually hold it for 36 hours before the actual departing flight because they don't want to lose your revenue. But for an inexpensive, discounted, advanced purchase ticket, it's 24 hours. And if you miss the deadline, the fare changes. That's the deal.
That's not really the deal. The fare changes online, but then often, if you call them, they will easily book the same fare for you.
Only-
And they'll
well-
extend it for 24 hours. I mean, this
Yes.
happened to me several times, and I bet that quite a few people.
It
in the
all
region
gets
are
down to
doing
the inventory on the flight, guys. If they have nobody on the flight and you can go bowling on the flight, then they'll take whatever revenue they can get. But 9 out of 10 times, the internet won't do that for you. The human being will, which proves the point. You had to talk to a human being, didn't you? Didn't you? The internet didn't do it for you. The human being did. Yes or no? Yes or no? The answer is yes. Okay. Yes, we have a question over there.
I imagine that after you finish a book, there's a lot of thought as to what you wanted to include or new information. What information did you get afterwards that you wish you had included?
Well, you know, when we started the website after I'd already handed in the book. So all that stuff that's coming in now is like, oh, if I'd only had it for the book. But guess what? That's why we have second editions. And we need to update it anyway, so why not? We still have to vet it, but at least we have a place to start looking now. So if anybody here, does anybody here have their own idea of where they don't want to go based on your own experience? I bet you do. Who wants to give me one of those? Oh, come on, you do. I know you do. Nobody wants to raise their hand. Okay. Plano Tech. All right. Who said Plano? Okay, why? Oh, I read that police report.
And it was over Thanksgiving, and it was the most depressing Thanksgiving ever, and the people weren't the most friendly towards our soccer team, who had people of different races.
Okay, so now we have a section in the book called Don't Go There When. So don't go to Las Vegas if they're having the NBA All-Star game, because the arrest record in Las Vegas goes up tenfold. All right? Now, Plano might be great at other times of the year, they just might not get their soccer act together over Thanksgiving. And what says Thanksgiving better than soccer in Plano, right? Anybody else want to throw out one? We got one right up here.
Western Islands in Iceland
The Iceland story?
during a festival. Westman Islands in Iceland, when there happens to be a festival, they have low clouds, which means
Yes.
you can get on the island, you cannot get off, and you have
Yes,
to be
there's a
rescued
reason,
by Coast Guard boat,
There is a reason
which breaks.
why the alcohol intake in Iceland is huge. They drink like fish. And right now, Iceland has turned into a party for us for the first time in years. Why? They had to devalue the currency, and now it's 2 for 1 for everything. It's one of the all-time great bargains, and I will tell you, we just did one of the Today shows from Iceland recently. It's a great location. It really is. But keep in mind, they drink like fish. They do.
Well, Peter, I actually had a question
Yes.
Based on your talk earlier. How much of the information that's in your book and the bad travel experiences can be written off as like just situational? Like if I have a bad time in Canton, Ohio or something,
Oh, yeah,
I know
this
a lot
is-
of people
yeah.
have good times in Cedar Rapids.
Sure. No, we didn't write this book based on someone's bad experience there one Thursday afternoon. It's based on environmental stuff. It's based on crime. It's based on pollution. It's based on... We found a place in Greenville, North Carolina. Now, this takes the cake for... Actually, it doesn't take the cake because cake's not even involved. For fast food intake. That's the only restaurants you can find in Greenville, North Carolina are fast food. And as a result, this is a statistic we had to we couldn't believe it, but it's true. Every resident of Greenville, on average, has all their breakfasts, lunches, and dinners at fast food restaurants 28 days a month. Can you say supersize me in a really bad way? So if you're driving in your car and you see a road sign saying food, next stop, Greenville, keep driving. Unless you want to get trapped, inside a Taco Bell for the rest of your life. I mean, we're just letting you know what to avoid. Does that mean you can't have a great experience in Greenville? Yeah, just don't eat. Oh, we got some questions over here. Yeah.
So it sounds like you obviously have a lot of staff to do your research, and they're always out there and traveling. How many people do you actually have on staff to do the research that goes into your books?
Well, it's sort of synergistic. They don't just do the research for the books. They do the research for my Today Show segments. They do the research for our website, petergreenberg.com. They do the research for other segments that I do for other shows. So I have about 10 people. 7 in LA, 3 in New York, who just primarily do research. Yes, and by the way, I have a rule with my researchers, which may come as a surprise to the Googlers here. If I ask them a question and they come back to me and say, the web said, they're fired. They have to pick up a phone and actually confirm it with a real live human being with a first and a last name, and they have to do it at least twice with 2 other people. Because just because it's on the web doesn't mean it's true. So much of what poses as information on the web to this day is transactional. It's promotional. It's not believable. It's an electronic brochure, which is exactly what we're trying to not do. So if they want to confirm it later on as a 4th or 5th source on the web, or if the web leads them to a human being, great. But if they just come back to me and they say, oh, I got this off the web, they're getting a one-way ticket. And they know it. Yes, you had another question?
Yep. Just a question.
Oh, there you are, sorry.
Regarding what some people might consider more of the rich tapestry of life, often if I go a place and there's some trouble, I consider it part of the rich tapestry of life rather than a negative thing.
Absolutely.
My anecdote about that is I was in Seoul, and there was one of these pre-planned riots, for want of a better term. That
You mean it had a brochure?
No, it was it was a gathering. The police were on one
Yes.
side, the workers were on the other side, and they proceeded to hit each other with gigantic sticks. And it was really interesting.
Did you like the audience participation part of the program?
You know, I'm British and soccer hooliganism, but went in a foreign country. And
Well, you know what?
I don't
all
have
kidding
1,000 people behind me.
Well, you know what? All kidding aside, you raise an interesting and a very good point. It has always been my philosophy that the best time to go somewhere is after they've had it. And it's not politically insensitive and culturally, not cool, but guess what? It's a fact. The best time to go somewhere is immediately after a civil disturbance, a natural disaster, or an act of terrorism, for the simple reason that everyone there will be so happy to see you. You will be welcomed with open arms. Whether it's a hurricane or the tsunami or going to Mumbai right now, you will have a tremendous experience. For another reason, you don't want to ever allow the terrorists to set your agenda, because then they will have won. And I'm not talking to be like being defiant and being bold and being macho. No, it's being practical. When you take a look at these countries that derive so much of their foreign exchange from travel and tourism, and they get hit hard for things that they really didn't have anything to do with, certainly the merchants didn't have anything to do with it, go. And you'll probably have a 5 times better experience than you ever would have. While all your friends are going, oh, I don't want to go, it's not safe. Really? Let me tell you a statistic that will surprise everybody here. But before I tell you the statistic, I have to ask the question. Since 1988, now we're coming up, by the way, on a very terrible anniversary. It's coming up on the 21st of this month. That's the December 21st, 1988 bombing of Pan Am 103 in Lockerbie over Scotland, in which 170 people lost their lives. So I'm going to give you a head start. You start with the number 159, because that's how many Americans died that day in that bombing and 11 Scots on the ground. So since December 21st, 1988, we're almost at 20 years now, how many American civilians, not Army soldiers, not Marines in barracks in Beirut, but how many American civilians have been killed by acts of political violence overseas? 20 years. Now, you know it's at least 159. Who wants to guess? There'll be no points will be deducted from your final score here. Take a shot. No. It won't be 0. No, it's about 700, maybe 707. That's in 20 years. Now let's put that in some kind of perspective. Every week in this country, in the United States, over 900 of our fellow citizens are seriously injured or killed in accidents in their own bathtub. So when somebody says to me, oh, I don't want to go there, it's not safe, I'm going to stay home, my response to them is, okay, but if you want to take a bath, you are on your own, pal. You are on your own. Good luck. You have to put it in perspective. So to your point, it's an excellent point. And it's not just to show support for our friends in India. It's to have let's be selfish. We want to have a great travel experience too. Why not go and have one? And believe it, it works. Any last questions? Now that I'm at Google, I've made it my goal to visit every one of your restaurants. Come here for daycare. I'm going to try to be 4 years old. You got the best scam going. I love this. It's a conspiracy of restaurants. I think it's great.
All right. Well, Peter, thank you very much. It was an amazing talk.
Thanks, everybody.